Ever wondered how a single, simple, and maybe even funny piece of art can take on centuries of history and power? Well, today we're going to dive into the massive idea of cultural decolonization, all through the lens of a surprisingly deep poem about a vest.
Yeah, I know, it sounds a little strange, but stick with me, because we're going to unpack exactly how a small act of creativity can become a seriously powerful tool of resistance. But first, we've got to understand the battlefield this is all happening on.
To really get what this poem is doing, we have to talk about that battlefield. And it isn't just about territory or who owns what. No, it's about ideas, it's about culture, and it's about a colonization of the mind itself.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. You've got colonialism, right? That's the most straightforward version of this fight. One nation taking political control over another to get at its resources. We've all seen that in the history books. But here's the thing. The real lasting influence isn't always physical, it's cultural.
This is where things get a little more subtle, a little more sneaky. It's called cultural hegemony. Basically, it's when the colonizers' way of life, their language, their values, their art, their everything, becomes so dominant that it starts to feel like the normal or right way to be, even to the people who were colonized. It's not just controlling land, it's about controlling the spirit.
And believe it or not, this stuff still happens today. That's what we call neo-colonialism. Even after a country gets its political independence, that old cultural and economic influence can just hang around. You see, former colonial powers can keep a kind of indirect control, creating a dependency that lasts for generations.
So how did this whole cultural dominance get built in the first place? Well, a huge part of the strategy was to create this massive defining contrast, a clear line between the colonizers and, well, everyone else.
The brilliant cultural critic Stuart Hall just nailed this. He argued that Europe basically built its own identity, this unique and triumphant image, by painting the rest of the world as its complete opposite. It's the ultimate us versus them story, but played out on a global stage.
And you can see it right here. On one side, you have the West, defining itself with all these dynamic, positive words. Civilized, progressive, the norm. And by doing that, it automatically shoves the rest into this negative box. Stagnant, primitive, the other. This wasn't just some random observation, you guys. This was a powerful narrative used to justify everything they were doing.
This whole dynamic creates this really fascinating psychological effect that Hall called mimicry. Think about it. The colonized person is encouraged to adopt the colonizer's culture, but, and this is key, they can never get it perfect. The result is what Hall calls a blurred copy. It's something that imitates the original, but in its very imperfection, it kind of threatens it too.
Okay, so with all that heavy-duty theory in our back pocket, let's finally turn to our main event, a simple, hilarious poem by Anwar Masood that takes on this entire power structure with one brilliant metaphor.
So who is this guy? Anwar Masood is a super famous Pakistani poet, and he's known for his humor, but his jokes are never just jokes. He's a master at using comedy to get at these really profound messages, and in this case, to poke some serious holes in that leftover colonial mindset.
All right, so here's the first half of his poem. It's called Bunain, which just means vest. He describes this foreign vest that you have to go out of your way to buy, and it's a total pain. You struggle to put it on. If you finally get it on, you can't get it off. And if you do manage to yank it off, it's ruined, useless, just a one-time frustrating mess. Got that image in your head? Good.
But then, the poet offers you a different option. He says, here, I'll give you a vest. His vest. And this one's a gift. It's easy to wear, easy to take off, it's durable, you can use it over and over, and he says it with so much pride, my vest is the best, my vest is the superior. I mean, the contrast could not be more stark, right?
So, what's he really talking about here? Yep, you've probably figured it out. This isn't a consumer report on undershirts. These two vests, they're powerful symbols for two completely different cultures. The poem is basically decoding that entire colonial power dynamic we were just talking about.
This chart just lays it out perfectly. The first vest, the one you have to go buy and struggle with, that's the alien colonial culture. But the second vest, the one that's just offered to you that fits just right, that's your own indigenous local culture.
So here's the real punchline. The poem is arguing that trying to adopt a foreign colonial culture might look appealing from a distance. You go out of your way to buy it, but in reality, it's a terrible fit. It's uncomfortable, it's disposable, and it just wasn't made for the people trying to wear it.
On the other hand, the poet's vest, your own indigenous culture,
It's already here. You don't have to go searching for it. It's a natural fit. It's comfortable. It's resilient. And it's so strong you can pass it down to the next generation. It belongs to you and you belong to it. Simple as that.
So through this one little funny story, Anwar Masood is doing something huge. He's basically handing people a roadmap for reclaiming their own identity and finding cultural confidence.
The poem itself becomes this amazing three-step act of decolonization. First, it challenges that built-in assumption that the Western way is automatically superior. Second, it reclaims and celebrates the strength and value of local traditions. And finally, it empowers people to stop trying to be a blurred copy and start taking real pride in who they are.
And this lines up perfectly with what other post-colonial thinkers have said, like the incredible Kenyan writer Ngugi wa Thiong'o. He argued that colonial language and books were literally designed to pull people away from themselves, to become tools of spiritual subjugation. Wow. And that's what Anwar Masood does so brilliantly. He flips that whole process on its head. He uses his local language, Punjabi, and humor, not just to entertain, but as a kind of weapon, a tool to dismantle that imposed other self and bring people back home, to their own world, with their heads held high.
So, at the end of the day, that leaves us with this question. Because the poem's metaphor, it isn't just about big national cultures, right? It could be about anything. Ideas, values, even the career paths we're told to follow. So it's worth asking ourselves, what are the vests we've been told we have to wear? And which ones are truly comfortably our own?